this at Cheap Joe's. It's a nice, it was $20.
Yeah, $20.
Has a cover on it. It's kind of like mine, very similar,
Just the one.
with large mixing wells, which is great for mixing color.
Yeah.
Just down at Cheap Joe's.
So you can just put your cover on and go, not worry.
Yep. So remember, you carry it out of here flat,
Yeah.
but then when you get it home, take the cover and put it kitty corner for the paints to dry so they don't mold.
Okay.
I'm going to show this to the video. Here's her palette. As I grabbed it because she's laying out colors, nice large areas for mixing. You put the cover on, carry it flat home, and then take the cover off and let it dry, especially if you have cats or something.
Yeah.
It only took me once for the cat to walk through my wet paints and across everything, and I'm like, that's it.
Mine walked through the oils.
Ugh, that's worse.
Well, I thought that somebody was bleeding on the hardwood floor, and I looked at the cat because she
The
just
paw
walked
was
by,
on, yeah.
and her paw was red. And I thought, oh, you poor baby. It was on my computer screen. It was on the granite that she walked across. But red is the slowest drying. So,
Oh, so you could get some
yeah, just cleaned it right up.
for oil paint, turpentine, mineral spirits. Something.
Water came off.
Really? Because it was still damp. That's
Yeah, it
good.
was brand new. I mean, she just I didn't care about her paw.
Okay. Yeah, she'd take care of
She
that.
could die.
The trick with these. Oh my.
Well,
These, I know. These plastic ones, mine, if I'm using it, the paint pretty much stays like this. But this is after years of use. So when you get some paint on this, we'll look at it because it's going to puddle up more.
Yeah.
You know, and you, it's a little frustrating sometimes, but you can take a very mild abrasive like Comet or Bon Ami or something like that and just slightly scratch that and clean it all off. Because you don't want that in your painting, of course. You don't want Comet in your
I was
painting.
going to ask if you clean it each time you clean your palette. Since it's so small, it's hard to blend pure colors if you already have colors all the way over them.
Right, which again I showed you last week. I'll take mine every now and then, spray a section of it,
Okay.
oh,
and clean off a section.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So if I need, like for yellow, if I need to put yellow down, I'll have a clean section. But if the yellow is too yellow, I can just take my brush very lightly. Here's the yellow. I'll pull this up into here to mix. And then I'll come over here and just touch the blue to soften that yellow a little bit.
Okay.
It's the complementary color, so it's the opposite, and we'll tone it down. So that's kind of nice sometimes to have a little mixed paints already going on there.
Did you by any chance remember to bring me a copy of what we're gonna do today?
I have extra, I didn't know, I was
Okay.
that, but I do have it, so.
Okay, well, could you, remember to bring those next week?
I tried to, well, I brought my computer, so you can have my copies, and then, and
Okay, I have a copy.
well,
I don't have it either. I think.
I have a number of them, well, you brought some
Okay.
photos.
Well,
I'll do
what
that.
about next week, though?
Yes, I'll bring a couple extra next week. I try to be careful because it's not my printer, it's my friend that I'm renting from, so I try to be. How are you? I would put your supplies on your right. Oh no, she needs to be towards this way to see me, right?
so we could push this table closer,
No, but I'm,
and then you don't have the crook to drop things.
how are you doing? You all set? Take your time.
You said we should go
Sorry,
ahead and
old
wet.
joke.
wet our-
Yeah, it is, but it's so funny.
And not.
Yeah, I'm cheating days.
Yeah,
I didn't know
not-
that.
I want to show you a couple
Not so much in San Jose.
fun techniques. So you've got a couple pieces of paper. One, if you have one this size, maybe go ahead and mark it in half. I want to show a couple more techniques we didn't do last week. Did we do rocks last week? We did the plastic wrap.
Yeah,
That
the
was
magic
me.
wrap.
It is magic. It's so easy.
Oh,
And
and I left mine.
Amazing.
Oh, no, I didn't.
there's more plastic wrap up here.
Oh, goodness gracious, I have
I got a new watercolor box. and
Should
I'm
this be
so
one that's just
happy
like on
with
the
it.
back of?
Yes, exactly. When we're practicing these, just do them on the back. I did start a little wash this morning because I wanted to show you something on top, but we'll go over that again. So, we did the rocks. And we did a flat wash and sprayed it with water. Did we do that one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna put a couple flat washes on my paper. I'll try to hold it up so you can see. I think I'll go with this color. I have
Do
no
we
idea.
need to do the same thing?
Well, let me show you first and then you can practice it.
Okay.
Because, you know, not watching. So yeah, so I'm gonna do, you know, a nice flat wash here and another one right here beside it. So these are some examples that I can refer back to later on. I can take, where is it? My rough spray bottle. I'm gonna cover the other two and just do a quick spray. And you can see that the water pushes it away. And I'll show you close up, but it will create these soft, almost snowflakes. And Mary?
I'm just kind of confused. Did you wet your brush to put the blue on there?
Always wet your brush first, yeah.
Okay. And you are using which blue?
Well, right now, let me go through this and then you can practice. I just used, looks like phthalocyanide. It's one of my middle blues. Now, remember we talked about looking at the wetness of your paper up here. You don't want to do either of these at the gloss stage. It's just going to wash in and blend it. We want to be between the sheen and the matte. So I look at this in the light and I see that middle one is kind of that. It's kind of between. So I'm going to take some of my salt, and Susan brought us salt that she will share with
I
everyone.
have so much salt.
She brought. And you can use just table salt. She brought us Himalaya salt.
Did she bring the margaritas too?
I know.
I forgot. I knew I forgot something.
This is going to be trickier because it's so large. You want to get some in your hand first. Good. There, it's broken down a little bit more. And then you can sprinkle that on the other paper.
After you.
I was trying to think, which shoulder was that? And then you have to sit and let these things dry. Kind of like the plastic wrap. A lot of you last week got anxious about the plastic wrap and took it off early. I understand that's hard to resist. Sometimes this works really well, sometimes it doesn't with the salt. I think my water sprayed worked pretty well. I'm going to give it another little one because I check it. The reason I spray it off to the side is you notice the first 2 times I squished it, nothing happened. So I'm looking against something dark so I can see that it's a good. And you don't want to overdo it. Again, if you spray, it gets all wet. It's like blot, 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 blot. It just disappears. You lose your textures. This is another tool. You don't have this maybe, but we talked about stamping last week. This is a little brayer, and you can just take this and let me mix up some good paint. So with the brayer, I can run through some paint, and then I can put it on my paper, and it creates kind of a cool texture.
Let's see. Nice.
So that might work for rocks or sand on a beach or something like that. Again, if you do it, let me get some, if I do it too often, it's going to kind of lose it. It's not going to be as interesting a texture. If this were a large and I was doing really well on this painting, I am going to practice it on a scrap piece of paper first. That's not what I want. It needs more paint, right? So that would tell me I need more paint this time, and I'd try it again. And then that's why it's good to have old pieces of scrap paper hanging around that you can practice on. Then you wash it off. So that's a brayer. There was another one to talk about.
How do you spell that?
B-R-A-Y-E-R. Brayer. My salt techniques are not doing very well. So I will try another one. I'm going to try ultramarine blue this time. Different colors work better with different techniques as well. And that's too wet, so now I have to wait. This is where it's nice to be working on 2 to 4 paintings at the same time, because you have to wait for certain things. This wash we're going to try, you have to wait, and it's way too wet. You can fan it.
So the paper should be
This right now I just should be what?
the paper should be between what two?
The paint
Yeah.
should be between the sheen and the matte.
Sheen
And it depends a lot on the color.
We're gonna go ahead and try the paper.
Let me just. We did the toothbrush last week. I just want to make sure I've got, and then you can practice these. Yeah, go ahead and try them. Oh, this is the one I wanted to try. So take a little bit of soap, one of my brushes, and it's not going to hurt the brush. This is Dawn that they use on live animals who've gotten into oil spills. And I want a good amount of paint, and I'm going to mix that in. Notice I'm not grabbing all the soap. I'm bringing a little bit in until I get foam. And then I can paint that on, and it can create some foamy effect. And
No way.
it's gonna show better as it dries. These are patient approaches. So there I go. You can do this. So play with those a little bit. Try them out. I can see already my ultramarine blue was too wet. The paint is being pulled into the salt instead of, and just clumping up there, instead of creating more of a star effect. But just little squares, try little squares. A lot depends on the type of paper you're using, the pigment that's in your paint, the amount of water you're using, the atmosphere around, and the timing. So you need to, once you get going and you find a paper you really like, you want to try to stick with that. I've stuck with Arches for the most part because it's reliable. I know what it does. It has a personality. I've come over here. This is a Canson, and this is like 50% tree fiber, what do I want to say, pulp, and 50% rag. So it's going to act differently than when I go over to my 100% rag, cotton rag, Arches paper. But you can see it's fun. I mean, you can learn some cool techniques, practice them before you put them on your big painting. My salt is coming out okay now. See, if I brushed it off too soon, I would not know that it was going to come out okay. You need to be patient. Some of these techniques, the plastic wrap, the salt, you really need for them to wait until they're totally dry. Again, have multiple boards ready with multiple paper on them so you can set that aside and let it dry while your creative juices are still going. Joyces. That's what I do. I did find some inexpensive boards on Amazon.
You did?
This is another brush that I haven't told you about. Whoops, I'm not supposed to do that. I knew it was clean. If it's clean, remember we talked about not putting your brush in your mouth? Because of the paint, we talked about Renoir being all crippled from arthritis, because he would point his brushes with the paint on them, and those heavy metals would get into his system, and that's what created. But if it's clean, that's, So this is called a rigger, R-I-G-G-E-R, and it's just a tiny, thin little brush, which is great for, and you don't need it, I'm just telling you about it. Tiny, tiny branches, tiny, like I've been critiquing somebody online that's doing sailboat masts. I had to stop and think what I was talking about. To do a sailboat mast, I'm going to take a scrap of paper here. If you're trying to do it straight up away from you, we talked about the physiology of your body, right? Didn't we? Doing this is awkward. Doing this is awkward. This is comfortable, right? I mean, you just try it. Going off at a diagonal, it's comfortable. So if you need to do a nice straight mast going up, turn the frickin' paper, you know? And then you can just, you draw it in the air a couple times. I want to make sure I can get this on my lens. Okay. And then set it down and you have a nice straight line.
Ooh, I can't see that.
It's very thin, very straight. So you just, rigger. So you kind of in the air, and then just when you feel comfortable, set it down quickly, one stroke, boom, done. If you start trying to pick at it and straighten it out, we can't, our hands shake, you know, we can't keep it. So you want it bold and do it, you know. You can also do it with this brush, but you have to stay way up on the tip, right? You have to stay way up on the tip. And you could do it with this brush on its, where we find that thin edge, but it's going to get thicker just by the nature of the brush. Again, you don't have to have one of those, but it is a useful tool every now and then to have. All right. How are your textures coming out? So we're talking about atmosphere affecting things as they get toward the distance. They tend to get lighter and a little hazier and bluer because there's more atmosphere between us and what's in the distance. If you're standing and you're looking, you can see this on the Blue Ridge. You know, you got mountains right here, and the trees that are near you are high contrast, and you can see they're green with dark trunks and all this. I'll tell you what, the trees way over on that distant mountain are the same, but because between you and them there's so much atmosphere, they appear just soft and hazy and bluish and lighter, right? They're not as contrasty. So that's what we're going to work on. So on your paper, when we get to it, you're going to think of some light trees in the background here. All right, this is not a great drawing. Then there'll be some that are a little bit closer. A little bit closer. The grass will come down. And then you'll have some darker trees. We'll put one of our fir trees up front here. And this one will be really dark and exciting. So that's kind of the atmosphere. And we're going to do this in layers. This takes time. Because if you paint certain section of it too soon, it'll just all blur together and you won't see anything. I also put the rule of thirds up here. It's dividing your picture space into thirds no matter what the orientation is. And you want usually some kind of, generally speaking, a center of interest at the intersection of two of those lines, instead of having a picture where the center of interest is smack dab in the middle. I mean, it's just kind of boring. This makes it more interesting. You can also do the same with this one. I don't know if anybody has that. This morning, before you came in, I very lightly dampened my paper. And I did a very soft wash of the sky because I want my details to be down in the trees. May I borrow that picture again for a moment? Thank you. Can you see okay? Okay. So again, one of our things is top to bottom. when we're painting watercolor. You start at the top to the bottom, the background to the foreground. Well, I did that. Top to bottom, thin to thick. So you start with thinner paint and build up with thicker paint later. In watercolor, your paint never really gets too thick. And light to dark. So light in the background will get darker as we come forward. We're going to do this in about 3 layers. So this would be the first wash. This is fairly light. I put the sky in. I kind of let that partially dry. Again, we're watching because we want it to get to about between the sheen and the matte. So I put that in. As that's drying, I'll throw in some grass. It's not grass. It's just brush strokes of water, right? It's just paint, and I'm just like whoosh, 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 putting it in there, picking up more paint, just back and forth. Bold strokes, make a decision and do it. And then I came and I took a slightly bluish green and I kind of just dabbled it in there. You can almost see my brush strokes. I just dropped it in. And that was still damp up top. The sky was still damp, so it bled into it. See how it's kind of soft, focus, and bleeding? Those are now my trees in the distance. So let's try getting to that point. I let this dry. It's a little too dry now. I'm going to have to dampen it again. But almost dry before you put in your second layer of mid-value trees. Then we'll let that almost totally dry when we put in our sharp, dark trees.
So we start with sky.
Start with the sky, maybe throw in a little grass. You're going to change the color a little bit. I added some red just to, I don't know, I was playing around. And then come back in and drop in some trees like that. Okay. Does that kind of make sense? And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of follow my thing here. Okay. If I do it right. I'm going to take this one, Carla, and I'm going to right near the tree line, and I want it irregular. Right, I just got a quick spray across. I'm going to check, and it's spotty on there. Mm-hmm. I can look in the light, and I can see it's spotty. Now I can bring in way too dark. See how that's way too dark? Mm-hmm. So I'm adding more water, and I'm just dropping in some color here, and see how it's kind of bleeding out, and it's following that irregular spray. I'm leaving a little light underneath here. That's going to be because I'm going to have the trunks of the tree in there eventually. So these are my middle ground trees. I mean, they don't look like trees. They're just, I'm blobbing in paint. A little heavier toward the bottom. Right? I can, if I need to, I can control that bottom side with a damp brush. Just kind of lift it a little bit if it's too thick for me. I could also take it this way and just that dark blob and drag it down, make it into a trunk of a tree. This is harder upside down. Right? But I mean, they're not perfect trees. It's just indicating this is kind of like a tree. So now I've got 2 layers. I've got the misty ones in the background. I've got some of these closer up. Okay. Yeah. Here are Molly's. It's, God, I hope this is it. It came out very nicely, bleeding. The trees are making themselves. She doesn't have to work on all these branches. They're being made in the distance. She drops some water here. The temptation is to make that blend back in. It's not, you're just going to make a mess. So make that into a bush. Boom, done. You know, drop some green in there, make it into a bush, add some darker trees over the top. Think now, where are your trunks going to go?